The golden gates of the Kingston mansion opened slowly as Anna stood outside, holding her small bag in one hand and her courage in the other. Her heart beat faster than ever because this was her last chance to get a job and feed her little son. Back home, she looked at the huge house that sparkled under the morning sun and whispered softly to herself, "I can do this. I have to do this." The butler opened the door and looked at her with tired eyes, saying, "Welcome to Kingston Mansion, Miss Anna. I wish you luck because you will need it." Anna gave him a small smile, not understanding why his voice sounded so hopeless. She stepped inside, and her breath caught in her throat. The hall was filled with crystal lights, shining on golden floors and walls lined with paintings that looked more expensive than her entire life. But something felt strange, too. Quiet. Too heavy. Like the air itself was warning her. She followed the butler through the long hallway and heard soft laughter. Somewhere upstairs. It sounded playful but also cold. The butler stopped near a staircase and turned to her. "Every maid here has quit within 24 hours, he said in a low voice. Anna frowned. "Why?" she asked softly. He looked up the stairs and whispered, "You will see." Soon, at that moment, 3 small shadows appeared on the grand staircase. 3 children dressed in fancy clothes, each holding something behind their backs. They looked like angels, but their eyes told another story. They were the famous Kingston Triplets, Max, Leo, and Mia. Their father was the billionaire Richard Kingston, the man who built half the city but rarely spoke to anyone, including his own kids. Anna smiled politely and said, "Hello, I am Anna, your new maid." Before she could say another word, cold, blue paint poured from above, covering her hair, face, and uniform. The sound of laughter filled the hall. Max shouted, "Welcome to the mansion, new maid." Leo clapped his hands, saying, "Let's see how long she lasts." And little Mia giggled, hiding behind her brothers. Anna stood there, frozen blue paint dripping down her face, her hands shaking. For a moment she wanted to cry. But she took a deep breath and said calmly, "You missed a spot." The triplets stopped laughing. Confused, she walked past them toward the bathroom, saying quietly under her breath, "Not today, I need this job." The butler stared at her, amazed. "No one has ever stayed after that," he whispered. She looked back at him and said, "Someone has to." She changed her uniform and returned to work, ignoring the paint on the floor. The triplets followed her, watching every move like small kings guarding their castle. They whispered to each other, "Let's make her quit like the others." They hid her cleaning bucket, threw her towel into the fireplace, and even switched off the lights while she worked. Anna kept cleaning, her voice calm, her face strong. When she found her bucket missing, she just said, "Guess I will use my hands instead." And when the lights went out, she laughed softly and said, "I have cleaned darker places before." Hours passed. The triplets grew tired of her silence. They wanted her to scream, to shout, to quit, but she didn't. She only worked quietly and hummed a soft lullaby that reminded her of her little boy at home. When the sound reached their ears, something strange happened. Mia stopped laughing. She whispered, "That song sounds like Mommy's," but she said nothing else. By evening, the mansion was spotless. For the first time in months, Anna stood near the window watching. The sun set through the glass. Her hands hurt, her feet ached, but her heart felt proud. The triplets peeked from behind the door, whispering, "She is weird. She didn't cry. She didn't run away. Maybe tomorrow she will." The boys nodded. But deep down, they were not so sure. That night, Anna lay in the small room the mansion gave her. She looked at her phone and saw a picture of her son sleeping. She whispered softly, "I will do this for you, baby, no matter what happens." Suddenly, she heard footsteps outside her door, then giggling, then silence. She waited, but no one came inside. She smiled faintly, knowing the children were not done yet. In the middle of the night, she woke to a strange noise coming from the kitchen, a clatter of dishes and tiny voices whispering. Anna grabbed her robe and walked downstairs. The mansion was dark and cold. She followed the voices and saw the triplets hiding behind the counter, whispering something about cookies and milk. Leo said, "Shh. Dad will hear us," Max said. "He never comes down here," and Mia whispered, "I miss." Mom Anna stopped, her breath catching in her throat. She saw a small photo lying on the counter. It was of the triplets, and a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Their mother, maybe she realized, then that the mansion was not only cold because of marble and money, it was cold because love had left long ago. She quietly stepped back, not wanting them to know she had seen them, and whispered to herself, maybe they don't need anger. Maybe they just need someone who stays the next morning. She woke before dawn, ready to face another day, ready to fight. Not with words, but with patience. She smiled at her reflection, saying, "You made it through the first night." Outside her door, someone had left. A note written in messy, childlike letters. It said, "Let's see if you can last till lunch." Anna smiled softly, folded the note, and whispered, "I will." The morning sun rose slowly over the Kingston mansion, painting the golden walls with a soft light that made everything look peaceful. But inside the house, a storm was already waiting for Anna. She walked into the kitchen, her hair tied neatly, her eyes full of quiet determination. She saw the same note from last night still sitting on the table. The words, "Let's see if you can last till lunch," made her smile a little. She picked it up and whispered softly, "Challenge accepted." The triplets were already awake, sitting at the long dining table with mischievous grins. Max whispered something too. Leo and Mia tried to hide her laughter as Anna entered the room, pretending not to notice their looks. She said, "Good morning, children. Breakfast will be ready soon." But before she could turn around, a spoonful of honey flew across the room and landed in her hair. Leo burst out laughing. Mia clapped her hands and Max said, "Oh, sorry, it slipped." The butler, who stood in the corner, sighed, shaking his head. He whispered under his breath, "Poor woman. She won't last till noon." But Anna only smiled and said, "Kindly thank you for the honey. Now I won't need perfume today." The triplets stopped laughing for a moment, surprised that she didn't yell. They had never met an adult who didn't lose control around them. When breakfast was done, Anna began cleaning. But the children had other plans. They poured flour on the floor, filled the vacuum bag with glitter, and swapped the cleaning soap with toothpaste. Soon the whole room looked like a snowstorm of sparkles. The butler came running. "Oh dear. What have you done?" he cried, but Anna stayed calm. She looked around the mess and said quietly, "It's just a bit of shine. The floor looks happy now." The triplets blinked at her faces, confused. This was not how the game was supposed to go. She was supposed to cry, scream, or quit. But instead she laughed and cleaned faster than anyone had ever seen by noon. The house looked spotless again. The air smelled like lemon, and soft music played from the small radio she had brought from her old apartment. Anna hummed a tune while working, a song her mother used to sing when she was tired. The triplets listened from the stairs. Curious. Leo whispered, "That song again." Mia said, "It makes me feel weird inside, like sad but warm." Max frowned and said, "Don't be silly. She's just trying to act nice." But when he looked at Anna's face, he saw something different. She wasn't acting. She really cared. Later that afternoon, Anna decided to bake cookies for the children. She mixed flour, sugar, and butter with gentle hands while the triplets watched from a distance, whispering their next prank. Leo whispered, "Let's put salt instead of sugar." Mia giggled. Max nodded and said, "She will finally get angry." They switched the jars quickly and ran off, hiding behind the door, watching with wicked smiles. When the cookies were ready, Anna brought them to the table. The children waited, excited for her to take a bite. But instead she smiled and said, "I made these for you. I'm not hungry today. Go ahead, try them." The triplets froze. They didn't expect her to share. Leo hesitated. Mia looked unsure, and Max shrugged. "Fine," he said, grabbing one. He bit into it, and his face twisted in surprise, then guilt. It was awful, salty and dry, but Anna only smiled kindly, saying, "Maybe too much salt, but that's all right, I'll fix it next time." The triplets stared at her in silence. Something inside them shifted, a small crack in the wall they had built around their hearts. She didn't shout, she didn't scold, she just forgave them. Leo muttered softly, "Sorry." She looked at him gently and said, "It's okay. Mistakes make better cookies next time." Mia lowered her eyes for the first time, feeling a small pinch of shame. As the day passed, the children tried other tricks. They locked the laundry room. They hid her phone. They spilled juice on the floor, but Anna kept smiling, working, singing quietly. She spoke to them kindly, without fear, and slowly the house began to feel different, softer, warmer when evening came. She sat in the small garden sipping tea for a moment of rest. She looked up at the tall mansion and whispered, "You didn't break me today." Inside the house, the triplets gathered in their playroom. Max threw a pillow at the wall, saying, "She's so boring, she doesn't even fight." Leo said, "Maybe she's brave. Maybe she just doesn't care." Mia hugged her knees, whispering, "Maybe she's sad like us at night." Anna heard small footsteps again. She pretended to sleep, but peeked through her half-closed eyes. She saw Mia walking into her room, holding a small blanket. The little girl whispered, "My room feels scary. Can I stay here for a bit?" Anna's heart softened. She nodded, and Mia climbed into bed, curling close like a kitten. Anna whispered, "Sleep well. Little one, you're safe here." In the hallway, Max and Leo peeked through the door, watching their sister sleep beside the maid. Max whispered, "She's going to get us in trouble." Leo shook his head quietly, saying, "Maybe she's not like the others. Maybe she's different." The moonlight touched the walls. Anna looked at the sleeping child beside her and felt something stir. Deep in her heart, she came here for money, for survival. But now she saw 3 lost souls who needed care, not control. She stroked Mia's hair gently and whispered, "Tomorrow will be better." Somewhere down the hall, the butler stood listening with a faint smile. He whispered to himself, "Maybe this one will last. Maybe she's the one who can change everything." And for the first time in years, the Kingston mansion felt a little less lonely and a little more alive. The morning light entered the mansion. Through tall windows, as Anna slowly opened her eyes, she found Mia still asleep beside her small hands, gripping the blanket tightly, like she was afraid of losing something. Anna brushed a strand of hair from the girl's face and whispered softly, "You're safe here, little one." When she walked downstairs, she was surprised to see the kitchen already a mess. Plates scattered, milk spilled, and tiny footprints everywhere. She sighed gently, knowing exactly who the culprits were. As she cleaned, she could hear whispers and giggles from behind the counter. She smiled without turning around and said, "Whoever is hiding there might as well help me clean." Leo jumped out, pretending to look shocked. "What? How did you know I was here?" Anna laughed softly. "Maybe magic. Maybe a mother's eyes can see everything." Max and Mia appeared next, looking guilty. Their prank had failed again. Anna handed them each a small towel and said, "If you make a mess, you clean it together." The triplets hesitated, but seeing her gentle smile, they agreed, slowly wiping the milk from the floor. It was the first time they had helped anyone in that house, and for a strange reason, it didn't feel bad at all. After breakfast, Anna went to tidy the study, where she found a large picture of a woman on the wall. She looked kind and graceful, her eyes full of warmth. Anna felt drawn to her. She whispered, "You must be their mother." She had seen that same smile in Mia's face. The butler entered quietly behind her, his voice soft. "That's Mrs. Kingston. She passed away 2 years ago. Since then, the house has never been the same." The children stopped listening. The master stopped caring. "No one can stay here long." Anna turned to him, her eyes sad. Maybe they don't need another maid. Maybe they need someone who remembers how to love. Later that day, she heard crying from upstairs. It was faint but sharp. Like a small heart breaking, she followed the sound to the playroom door inside. She saw Leo sitting alone, holding a small photo. His eyes red with tears. When he saw her, he quickly hid the picture and shouted, "Go away. You're just like everyone else." Anna didn't move. She knelt down and said quietly, "Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm someone who knows what it's like to lose someone too." Leo froze, not knowing what to say. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. Anna didn't ask more. She just sat on the floor near him, humming a soft tune. After a while, he whispered, "That song my mom used to sing that when I couldn't sleep." Anna looked at him gently. Maybe she taught me without knowing. He didn't understand. But somehow the sadness in his chest felt lighter. In the evening, Anna baked again. This time the cookies were perfect. She placed them on the table and called out, "Dinner's ready." The triplets came running. The smell of chocolate filled the air, laughter replaced shouting, and for a few minutes the mansion felt alive. Max took a bite and smiled for the first time in months. Mia giggled. With crumbs on her face, Leo stayed quiet, but there was a small spark in his eyes. The butler watched from the doorway, whispering to himself, "I can't believe it. They're laughing again." Anna smiled to herself, knowing that small things could heal, even the deepest wounds. When night came, the house grew silent but not empty. Anna sat by her window, thinking about her own son. She missed him so much. His laughter, his tiny arms around her neck. She worked for him every moment, hoping to give him a better life. She looked at the moon and whispered, "Baby, I'm proud of you, and I hope one day you'll be proud of me too." Suddenly a voice spoke behind her. "It's late, you should sleep." Anna turned around, surprised. It was Max standing by the door. His usual smirk gone, he held out a small toy car and said, "This was my mom's gift to Leo when she was in the hospital. He dropped it under the couch last year and never picked it up. Maybe you can give it to him tomorrow." Anna took the toy softly, her eyes warm. "Thank you, Max." He shrugged, trying to act tough, but she saw the kindness hiding inside him. As she placed the toy on her bedside table, she realized something. The triplets were not cruel because they wanted to be. They were cruel because they were hurt, and no one ever stayed long enough to see the pain behind their games. They had lost their mother, and their father had buried his love under work and money, leaving them with only loneliness wrapped in gold. The next morning, Anna woke, early again, determined to bring light into the mansion. She made pancakes with strawberries just like her mother used to. She placed them on the table and waited. Soon the triplets came down, rubbing their eyes. They saw the food and smiled. Mia asked, shyly, "Can we eat with you today?" Anna smiled. Of course we are a team now, as they ate together. Laughter echoed through the halls. Richard Kingston's car pulled into the driveway, returning from another long business trip. The butler stiffened, whispering, "The master is home." The children's faces changed, their smiles fading, replaced with fear. Anna noticed and wondered why the mention of their father made them so quiet. The sound of the front door opening filled the air. Deep, heavy footsteps echoed. Through the marble floor, the butler whispered under his breath, "I hope you know what you're walking into, Miss Anna." She looked at him calmly, saying, "I'm not afraid." The mansion that once felt like a battlefield now held a fragile peace. But as the tall figure of Richard Kingston entered the hall, his sharp eyes scanning everything, that peace was about to shatter. And though Anna didn't know it yet, the real test was only beginning. The heavy front door of the Kingston mansion opened wide, and a tall man stepped inside, his shoes clicking against the marble floor, every sound sharp like thunder. The triplets froze at the dining table, their laughter gone in an instant. Richard Kingston had returned, his eyes cold, his face tired from endless meetings and travel. He looked at his children, then at Anna, who stood by the table holding a tray of pancakes. The butler bowed quickly, saying, "Welcome home, sir." But Richard barely nodded, his gaze fixed on the woman standing in his dining room. "Who are you?" he asked, his deep voice filling the space. Anna spoke politely. "I'm Anna, sir, the new maid." Richard frowned. "Another one," he said quietly. "How long this time?" The butler whispered, "She's been here 3 days." Sir Richard's eyebrows lifted. 3 days, impressive. He looked at the triplets, who sat quietly, heads down. "Why are you so quiet?" he asked sharply. Max mumbled, "We were eating." "Sir." Leo didn't answer, and Mia hid behind her brother. Richard turned back to Anna and said sternly, "My children are difficult. You will not last much longer. No one ever does pack your things by the end of the day." Anna looked him straight in the eye and said calmly, "Sir, your children are not the problem." The butler gasped softly. No one ever spoke. To Richard Kingston that way, the room went silent. Even the clock seemed to hold its breath. Richard's voice grew colder. "What did you say?" Anna stood firm. "They don't need a new maid, sir. They need their father. Richard stared at her, shocked by her courage. He had built empires and crushed competition, but this woman with paint stains still on her shoes dared to stand up to him. "You are out of line," he said quietly. Anna replied, "Maybe, sir, but someone has to say it before it's too late." Richard's jaw tightened, his pride stung. He turned to the butler, saying, "Give her one day. If she can make my children behave before tomorrow morning, she stays. If not, she leaves." When Richard walked away, the triplets stared at Anna, their eyes wide with worry. Max whispered, "Why did you do that? He's going to fire you." She smiled gently. "Maybe, but we have one day to prove him wrong." That night, Anna gathered the children in the living room, the fire crackling softly. She looked at them with kindness and said, "Tomorrow your father will see how amazing you are. But we need to show him not through tricks or anger, but through love." The triplets exchanged unsure glances. Leo asked, "But he doesn't care about us." Anna shook her head softly. "He does, he just forgot how to show it." They spent the evening preparing, cleaning the mansion, baking small treats, and even drawing a picture. Together, a big heart surrounded by bright colors inside, they wrote, "We miss you, Dad." When morning came, the mansion smelled of pancakes, flowers, and something new, something warm. Richard came down the stairs ready to leave for work, but stopped frozen. At the sight before him, his children sitting neatly at the table, breakfast waiting, a drawing placed in front of him. Max said softly, "We made this for you, Richard." Picked it up, his hands trembling, his eyes landing on the drawing of the same flowers his late wife had loved. He turned to Anna, his voice low. "Who told you about her favorite flowers?" Anna blinked, confused. "Sir, I didn't tell them about that." The children looked at each other, surprised. Richard looked down again at the paper, his eyes clouded with memories from years he had tried to forget. The butler watched quietly, knowing something deep was shifting inside his master's heart. Richard sat down slowly for the first time in years. The billionaire father shared breakfast with his children. Mia passed him a plate, her small voice gentle. "Eat before it gets cold, Daddy." He looked at her for a long moment and nodded, taking a bite. The triplets smiled shyly. Anna stood by the doorway, watching silently, her heart swelling with hope. Maybe, just maybe, this family could heal. Richard finished eating and looked up at her, saying quietly, "You win for now, but don't think I've forgiven your attitude." She smiled faintly. "I didn't ask for forgiveness, sir. Only understanding." The rest of the day was calm. The triplets followed Anna everywhere, eager to help. They arranged flowers, polished tables, and played music through the house. Laughter returned like sunlight after rain. Richard stayed in his study, pretending to work, but every sound of their joy made his chest ache with something he hadn't felt in years. That evening, as Anna was preparing to leave for her small room, Richard appeared at the door. He looked tired, but softer than before. "I want to talk," he said. She nodded, waiting. He spoke quietly. "You remind me of someone, my wife. She never gave up on anyone." Anna smiled gently. Maybe she taught her children that too. Richard sighed, rubbing his temples. "I don't know how to talk to them anymore. They stopped listening." After she was gone, Anna replied, "They don't need words, sir. They just need you to stay." Richard looked at her, his expression unreadable, then said, "You have courage, Miss Anna, more than most people I've met." She looked back at him, saying, "Sometimes courage is just love that refuses to run away." He didn't respond, only nodded slowly, then turned to leave. As he walked up the stairs, he saw his 3 children asleep on the couch, the drawings still on the table beside them. His heart cracked open, just a little. From the hallway, Anna watched him quietly, knowing she had won a small battle. But the war for their hearts had only begun. That night, as she turned off the lights, she whispered to herself, "Tomorrow will be harder, but I'm not afraid anymore." And somewhere in the mansion, Richard stood before his late wife's portrait, whispering softly, "Maybe she was right. Love is the only thing this house ever needed." The next morning came quietly. The air inside the Kingston mansion felt lighter, softer, almost like the walls themselves could breathe again. Anna walked into the kitchen early, humming her favorite tune. The smell of warm bread filled the air. She looked out the window at the golden sky, whispering to herself, "A new day, new hope." She didn't notice Richard standing at the doorway watching her. He looked different today, less like the cold businessman, and more like a man trying to remember who he once was. He spoke softly. "That song, where did you learn it?" Anna turned surprised, her hand still busy with the dough. "I used to sing it to my son," she said, then smiled. "It helps me stay brave." Richard nodded, his eyes distant. "My wife used to sing that too when the children were small." For a moment, silence filled the room heavy, but gentle Anna looked at him carefully and said quietly, "She must have been a wonderful woman." Richard's face hardened a little. She was. Then he turned away, saying, "Nothing in this house has been right since she left." He paused, then looked at her. "Again, you remind me of her, but you shouldn't." He walked out, leaving Anna with more questions than answers. Later that morning, Anna went upstairs to clean Richard's study. She opened the curtains and sunlight poured in, revealing shelves of books and a large painting covered with dust. She pulled the cloth away and gasped. It was a portrait of Richard, his wife, and the triplets smiling together, their happiness frozen in paint. She touched the corner softly, whispering, "They were so happy once, just." Then she heard footsteps behind her. It was Richard. He looked at the uncovered painting and frowned. "I keep that hidden," he said sharply. She turned to him. "I'm sorry, sir, but maybe you shouldn't hide it anymore." He sighed, staring at the faces in the painting. "I thought hiding it would stop the pain, but it only made it worse," he said softly, his voice shaking. Anna took a deep breath and said, "Sometimes the only way to heal is to remember." The triplets entered the room holding a small box. Leo said, "We found this in Mom's closet. The butler said it was hers." Richard froze, his eyes wide. "What box?" he asked slowly. Max opened it carefully. Inside was a necklace, a few letters, and a small note written in gentle handwriting. Anna could see the words clearly. "My dear Richard and my children, if you ever feel lost, remember that love is the only thing that keeps this house alive." Richard took the note, his hands trembling, tears filling his eyes. He whispered, She knew I would lose myself." Anna stood quietly beside him, her voice soft. "Sir, she wanted you to keep loving them even when she couldn't be here anymore." Richard sat down, covering his face. The triplets watched their father silently for the first time, seeing him not as the cold man they feared, but as a man who missed their mother just like they did. Anna knelt down beside Leo, saying, "Your mom loved you very much. She told me once in the hospital that her children were the light of her life." Richard's head lifted sharply. "You knew her?" he asked, his voice breaking. Anna nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. I worked as a nurse at the hospital. She was kind to everyone, even when she was in pain. She asked me to tell her children that she loved them always, but I never got the chance. Until now." The room fell silent, the air heavy with emotion. Richard whispered, "You were there with her at the end." Anna nodded again, tears in her eyes. "I promised her I would remind you someday, and maybe that day is today." Richard looked at her for a long moment, his eyes filled with pain and gratitude. Then he stood and said, "Thank you for keeping that promise, Miss Anna." The triplets ran to Anna, hugging her tightly. Mia whispered, "Thank you for telling us about Mommy." Anna hugged them back gently, saying she never really left. "She lives here." She pointed to their hearts. Leo wiped his tears and looked at his father. "Dad, can we visit her grave?" Richard nodded, his voice soft. "Yes, we will go together." That evening the family went to the garden where their mother's favorite flowers grew. Anna followed quietly. As Richard placed the necklace from the box beside the flowers, he whispered, "I'm sorry I forgot how to love, but I will not forget again." Mia held his hand and said softly, "Mommy would be happy now." Richard looked at her and smiled for the first time in years, a real smile full of warmth. As the sun began to set, the sky turned golden and pink. Anna stood at a distance watching the family together, her heart full of peace. She thought of her own son and whispered, Maybe one day we'll have this kind of peace too. When they returned to the mansion, the children laughed and talked excitedly. Leo told stories about their mother. Max showed an old toy car and Mia drew hearts on a napkin. Richard sat quietly listening, his eyes soft. Anna served tea and looked around the table at their faces, realizing that the house that once felt like a cage now felt like a home again. Before going to bed, Richard stopped by the kitchen door and said, quietly, "You kept this family together when I couldn't. You've done more in days than I did in years." Anna looked at him, smiling humbly, saying, "I didn't fix anything, sir. I just reminded them what love looks like." Richard nodded slowly, his voice barely a whisper. "Maybe you reminded me too." As Anna walked to her room, she looked back at the grand hall lit with soft light. She felt tears in her eyes. But they were not sad tears. They were tears of hope. She whispered into the quiet mansion, "Thank you, Mrs. Kingston, I kept my promise." And somewhere in the distance, the night breeze carried a faint sound, almost like a gentle voice whispering, "Thank you, Anna." The sun rose gently over the Kingston mansion, the golden light touching every window and every wall like a soft blessing. The house that once felt cold now seemed alive. Laughter echoed from the hall as the triplets ran down the stairs, chasing each other with bright smiles. Anna stood by the kitchen counter watching them, her heart warm. She had never seen them so full of joy before. Richard walked in, still in his dressing gown, holding a cup of coffee. He stopped for a moment just to watch his children play, a small smile forming on his face. Something inside him had changed. The heavy armor he wore for years was gone, and in its place was a man rediscovering love. He looked at Anna and said quietly, "They haven't laughed like this in years." She smiled back, saying, "Maybe they just needed someone to remind them how." The children rushed to the table shouting. Breakfast time. Anna had made pancakes again with strawberries shaped like hearts. Mia climbed onto the chair and said, "Daddy, you have to try them." Leo nodded and said, "She makes them just like Mom used to." Richard's hand trembled a little at those words, but he took a bite and smiled softly, saying, "They taste perfect." After breakfast, Anna cleaned while humming a tune. The triplets followed her around, helping without being asked. Max carried the plates. Leo wiped the table and Mia swept the crumbs. The butler watched from the doorway, whispering to himself, "This house finally feels like home again." Later that morning, Richard called Anna to his study. She entered nervously, wondering if she had done something wrong. He looked serious, but his voice was calm. "You've done something I didn't think was possible, Miss Anna. You brought peace to my home." She smiled humbly, saying, "I didn't do it alone, sir. Your children just needed someone to listen." Richard stood up and walked to the window, his eyes soft with thought. "I was lost after my wife passed away. I forgot how to be a father. I buried myself in work and I let pain control me." Anna said quietly, "Sometimes pain makes us forget who we are, but love can remind us again." He turned to her with a faint smile. "You're right," he said, then added, "I don't want you to work here as just a maid anymore. I want you to stay as part of this family." Anna blinked, surprised. "What do you mean, sir?" he said. "You'll be our house manager and the children's mentor. You'll make sure they grow with kindness and discipline. I trust you with them more than anyone." Tears filled Anna's eyes. She whispered, "Thank you, sir. I don't know what to say." Richard smiled, saying, "Just promise me you won't quit in 24 hours. She laughed softly, saying, "I think I already passed that test." That evening they all gathered in the garden, the triplets playing under the golden sunset. While Richard and Anna watched from a distance, Mia was trying to catch butterflies. Leo built a small kite and Max chased him across the grass. Their laughter floated in the air like music. Richard looked at Anna and said, "They remind me of her every day." Anna nodded. "I know she'd be proud of them," she said. "And proud of you too." Looked at her quietly, then said, "You know, I used to think money could fix everything, but now I realize it only builds walls. Love is what holds them up." Anna looked at him, her eyes kind, and said, "Then keep building with love." "Sir," as the sky turned pink, the triplets called out, "Come play with us." Anna laughed and ran to them, joining their game, the four of them spinning in circles, the air filled with joy. Richard watched, smiling for the first time in years. He felt peace deep in his heart. The garden that once stood silent now burst with life. When night came, the mansion glowed with soft lights. The triplets snuggled on the couch, watching an old movie. Anna sat beside them, knitting a small scarf for her son at home. Richard walked in and said softly, "You can bring your boy here sometime if you'd like." Anna looked at him surprised. "Really, sir?" He nodded. "Of course this is your home too now." Her eyes shone with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. The triplets cheered, saying yes. "Bring him, we want to meet him." The warmth in the room was like sunshine even though it was night. The family that once broke apart was slowly becoming whole again. Later, when everyone had gone to bed, Anna walked quietly through the mansion. She stopped. By the grand portrait of Mrs. Kingston, her eyes gentle, she whispered, "I kept my promise. They're smiling again. I hope you can see them from where you are." She felt a soft breeze move through the hall like a silent answer. In her small room, Anna sat, on her bed looking at her son's photo. She smiled and whispered, "Mommy did it, baby. I made a home for us." She looked out the window at the stars shining over the mansion, and for the first time in many years she felt safe. The next morning, Richard found a small note on the kitchen table written in Anna's neat handwriting. It said, "Thank you for believing in me and for letting me believe in them." Richard read it and smiled, placing it beside the family drawing on the fridge. As the days turned into weeks, laughter filled every corner of the mansion again. The triplets woke early to help with breakfast. Richard joined them for dinner every night, and Anna became the heart that kept everything alive. She had come as a maid, but she stayed. As family one afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Anna stood at the window watching the triplets play in the garden, her heart full. She whispered softly, "Looks like I lasted more than 24 hours. And somewhere deep inside the old mansion that once held sorrow, there was only love, laughter, and the sound of a single mother who never gave up on hope."